Hello there. Good morning and welcome to the news at 6. The news is live on Joy 99.7 and hits 103.9 FM in Accra, in Kumasi on Love 99.5 FM, Facebook live stream and over 30 affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions, including Kalio FM 107.3, Akachi, Radio Max 105.1 FM, Takrady and Ridge 104.9 Tamale. Get radio, TV and online content on the myjoyonline.com interactive app for Android and iOS devices. Coming up, government reiterates its assurance that coupons and maturing bonds of all holders will be paid as it formally closes the domestic debt exchange program with over 80% participation. There's, however, a caution from individual bondholders should government renege on this pledge.
That is a call for war. But I don't think that is the matter. And I don't want us to have a conversation where either party says, look, we've had a very cooperative engagement.
And later in business,
government advised to sacrifice and create more fiscal space post-debt exchange program in order to restore fiscal sustainability and turn around the economy.
Well, also coming up, Media Foundation for West Africa backs Ayariga's call to shut down radio stations in Boko, raising red flags about incitement to violence.
What is the essence of a radio if it is not being used for good and rather being used for war?
And later in the bulletin, going through with a major surgery while trying to keep your career on track.
In Ghana, they say if you're going to do fibroid surgery, you have to give birth, so I'm like, I don't even know. Am I even ready to give birth? Like, where am I in my career?
We'll hear from singer Adina. My name is Mamavi Owusu-Aboagye. Details of the stories now. Government is this morning reiterating its assurance that coupons and maturing bonds of all holders will be paid as it formally closes the domestic debt exchange program with over 80% participation. It has, however, opted not to make any direct comment on exemption of pension bondholders, despite the week-long agitation by the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. The Individual Bondholders Forum, on the other hand, want government to honor its obligations. Senor Hossi is convener.
That is a call for war, but I don't think that is the matter. And I don't want us to have a conversation where either party says, look, we've had a very cooperative engagement with the ministry. I've had conversations even this morning with the ministry. We want to trust that we are all reasonable, we are cooperative, and we are seeking the good of the country. The Ministry of Finance must admit that they are facing a major credibility crisis, and its actions are the only mechanisms to really undo that.
We can now hear from the convener of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum, Dr. Edu Ananienchi.
I expect him to just say the pensioners has been exempted. He will be giving an update on what has happened, the results, fine. But I expect a statement to come because at this time, you can't get us into the program.
My colleague Joseph Akable joins me in studio with a copy of that statement from the Ministry of Finance. Joseph, government first addresses the concerns regarding its obligations. Tell us more.
Paragraph 3 of the statement indicates that the government would like to reassure all individual bondholders who elected not to participate that your coupon payments and maturing principals, like all government bonds, will be honored in line with the government fiscal commitment.
And we know the pension bondholders have been asking for a direct statement from government on total exemption. What does it say?
So government does not say that, rather it makes the point that it has already made about it being voluntary. So from the onset, the domestic debt exchange program to its closure, the participation in the program was voluntary. Having in mind that the entire exercise was voluntary all throughout the exercise, government always affirmed that crucial fact that individual bondholders are free not to participate. However, under the circumstance, government at the same time always made a strong but humble appeal for holders to participate in the domestic debt exchange program, seeing it as very critical act of burden sharing in the ongoing national effort to tackle economic crisis.
And finally, Joseph, we understand participation rate is some 80%.
The government says actually more than 80% participation, and it wants to thank the public and the people of Ghana for their forbearance and support throughout these very difficult times.
Joseph Akable with details of a statement issued by the Finance Ministry. Now, the calls to shut down radio stations in Boko is getting louder. The Media Foundation for West Africa is the latest to join calls to silence the stations or restrict them from being used to incite violence. MP for the area says the conflict-ravaged town violence has not only killed members of his family but destroyed the economic activities of the town, hence the need to close the stations.
Media houses or radio sometimes have contributed to the conflict instead of helping to bring about radio and peace. To bring about peace in those times. And so on a day like this, as we celebrate World Radio Day with the theme Radio and Peace, we would like to in particular remind our colleagues who operate in places where sometimes tensions may rise, where sometimes there may be conflict, that we have a particular responsibility to help in the exercise to bring peace and unity.
That's Kojopon Nkrumah Information Minister. Well, we can now hear from the Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Abrahima.
We are just looking on as the state continues to fail to act, as citizens continue to die. What is the essence of a radio if it is not being used for good and rather being used for war? And in the context of Boko, that is really what is happening at the moment.
And that's Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Now, the board chairman of the Northern Development Authority, Dr. Suleimana Abdullahi, is raising concerns about how the institution's involvement in corruption is distracting it from executing their core mandate. Anti-corruption campaigners have been pushing for the Chief Executive Officer of the Northern Development Authority and his two deputies to step aside from their role pending the conclusion of a criminal case filed against them by the special prosecutor. Speaking to Joy News, Dr. Abdullahi said it is unfortunate that allegations of corruption has taken attention off the plight of thousands of poor families requiring the intervention of the authority in the northern region.
Press or the undue focus on the NDA with national headlines, whether or not it's affecting us, yes, that it is. And I think the sad thing is if anybody who goes to the 5 northern regions and sees the kind of problems that we have, if anybody goes up north, travels to any rural community and sees how difficult life is to live in an area where people depend on rainfall and the climate change and all these things are affecting people's livelihoods, and that we actually spend so much time talking about an issue when it is in court and it's going to be settled. It's really very sad. And the NDA has been in the news very sadly for such a long time, and it's unfortunate.
And that's Dr. Suleimana Abdullahi, board chairman of the Northern Development Authority. Let's go to Kumasi now, where circuit courts there have supervised the distraction of quantities of Indian hemp, heroin and cocaine seized from convicts appearing before them in 2022. There's more in the following report.
At least 6 accused persons found to be possessing narcotic drugs illegally were put before the Kumasi Circuit Court between March and November 2022. Some who were convicted on their own plea were fined between 200 and 2,000 penalty units, equivalent to 2,400 and 24,000 Ghana cedis. Following a court order, the banned substances were destroyed in the presence of officials of the Narcotics Control Commission, Environmental Protection Agency, police, the media and the Judicial Service on Monday. The street value of the narcotic drugs were not readily available.
Ohim Interior with that report. And before we go, singer Adina has shared the story of how she braved up and took advantage of the ban on public gathering to undertake a surgery where she feared threatened her career and life. Listen.
Because I knew having fibroids meant having surgery. And I didn't know if I was ready for surgery. I didn't know what the implications were. In Ghana, they say if you go and do fibroid surgery, you have to give birth. So I'm like, I don't even know. Am I even ready to give birth? Like, where am I in my career? It was pretty crazy. We found out that we had more inside my system than the pictures showed. Because they took out 16 fibroids. And all this time they said, oh, you have 6 or 7.
16?
Yeah. The president said, Val's Day, we're canceling shows, And I was like, you know what? If we're canceling shows and I'm home, what am I doing in the house? This is the best time to do it. So let me use this period to do the surgery, use it to recover, and then come back. And that's exactly what I did. Woo!
And that's singer Adina speaking on the Doreen Avio show. And that's how we end the news at 6. Our top story. This hour, government reiterates its assurance that coupons and maturing bonds of all holders will be paid as it formally closes the domestic debt exchange program with over 80% participation. Please log on to myjoyonline.com for more news. My name is Mamavi Owusu-Aboagye. Thanks for listening.